human being as an entity constantly represents reality and turns it into experience for us. Our nervous system, our senses, our brains, our beating hearts, everything about us takes in reality and represents it into experience, which is an important thing to know. And enlightenment refers to a change that happens inside of us that rearranges how we experience reality. And usually when we think of enlightened people, when we think of enlightenment, we think of somebody who's able to sit for hours and just be there. And that's kind of just what they do, you know. It's kind of a cliche, you know, the monk in the mountain type deal. But the reason enlightenment even exists is because we spend all of our time representing reality. 100%, or I guess you could say 99.9% of the time, we live a fully subjective experience. And the objective is something that we don't quite come in contact with very often. There are stories of that happening on accident, but the whole purpose of enlightenment, the whole reason people go to India or anywhere to find this thing, is because we view ourselves as stuck in a body, and we view ourselves as having these thoughts, feelings that seem to happen to us, and we want to find this thing that changes that. And people spend 10 or 15 years meditating to get there. And the most important thing about this is what I'm referring to is not an intellectual concept or exercise. It is a palpable experience that at its core is attention. So, the first thing that happens to an enlightened person is their thoughts seem to stop. Okay? So imagine it like this. Thoughts as a circle, a spinning wheel. And in the middle of that circle there is a surging energy that fuels this circle, and it spins constantly. And at the top of the circle, there's almost like a keystone, like at the top of a proscenium arch. And around this circle, view it as having little snippets that are sectioned off, almost like film. And it spins around and around. And once one of these snippets passes through the very top part of the circle, the proscenium arch, that's a thought. And as the circle spins around, as it goes to the bottom end of the circle, it's dipping into some kind of a liquid, let's say. But that's our unconscious. That's what we are not thinking of, but exists. And this thing spins round and round, and thoughts occur to us. We have thoughts. We're able to slow the circle down. We're able to stop the circle. Sometimes our experience around us demands our attention to such a degree that it freezes the circle on the most relevant thing, which is our current experience. But this thing spins round and round all the time. It's our everyday experience. And for the most part, as it dips down into the unconscious, it's grabbing things that are relevant, maybe more relevant, maybe less relevant, sometimes completely irrelevant. But it dips down in there and it changes the images as it dips to the bottom, comes around, goes through the keystone at the top, flashes through our conscious, And we either grab the thought or we don't. But they keep going on and on and on all day long. And remember, at the heart of this, there is a surging energy, sort of a life force, like a system that keeps it going, which is our very life force itself. And enlightenment makes it to where this thing is still spinning. So when somebody becomes enlightened, let's say, as they're sitting there, the first few minutes, they're just watching this circle spin. And this is where most people get stuck, because they think to themselves, this is stupid, I'm just sitting here, what am I even doing? Because these are some of the more relevant thoughts that start to occur to you when you first start sitting there. It's like, this is ridiculous. But slowly it slows down. It slows down more and more. And the light force, the thing in the middle, begins to dim. And it slowly shuts down the circle. And that life force, instead of being the fine point of your attention towards what you're thinking about, it starts to seep into your body. And all of a sudden, you're not thinking about anything. And athletes, people who get deeply engrossed with things, even sex, even engrossing conversations, have this effect where your attention leaves you, where you're so committed to and you're so impassioned by what you're doing that this circle changes. And a person who's enlightened sees this suddenly, and it's the closest thing to, let's say, God or objectivity that a human being can possibly get to, because it stops the screen and suddenly plugs you into raw reality as it occurs, without the representation, or at least as little of it as possible. You cannot reach full objectivity, but you can get pretty damn close. When it first happened to me, I was 26, sitting exactly where I am now. And when it dawned on me, I was looking at a cup on my desk. And it was the most astounding thing that I have ever seen. The stuff around me in my room, myself, my name, it changed. You feel palpably that your skin is not a separating item, but a connective item. But it is both. It both connects us and separates us from everything. And it takes that raw, pure, always subjective experience that is so attached and starts pumping down into detachment and objectivity further and further and further, until this ratio changes. And the thing is, too, people want to stay there. It's so different. It's so unlike everyday normal experience that people almost get addicted to it. And they want to just spend as much time there as possible. And I understand that, because it's fucking sublime. But a true wise man, let's say, not only experiences this, but they also come back. They come back to Bob Johnson. But it's different. It's not like it was before. And you never forget it. It changes you forever. And there's stories of people, like in World War II, where, there'd be a French soldier, and they'd hear one of the German planes above drop a bomb, and it was getting louder and louder, and the soldier knew that he was going to die. And while that was going on, this thing happened to him, and everything seemed to stop. He knew what he was. He knew his relationship to all things. But then he didn't die. the bomb hit somewhere else, like nearby. And it changed him. That simple moment, that one time where it wasn't pure subjectivity, that one time where he was pushed into objectivity, suddenly this instant recalibration of his entire being. And it changed him, and it changes anybody who it happens to. That's why anybody who talks about this has to talk about the present. That's like the whole thing is the present. That's why it's the core of the doctrine. Because it's kind of funny. No matter what we do, we are always in the present. There's no way out of the present. The only thing that can escape it is attention. Attention is the one thing that can bring a human being somewhere else. But we're never not here. And when I talk about this, all you have to do is look around, and there it is. All you have to do is sit quietly and watch your thoughts go, and you don't grab onto any one of them in particular. You just see them as events occurring inside of you, and slowly and slowly and slowly they just stop. And there it is. That's enlightenment. That simple thing. But the wisdom therein brings a flood of words. A flood of an entirely different way of experiencing the world on a day-to-day basis. And like I said, it's beyond intellectual as a concept. And we see that we are one continuous process, ongoing. And we are these special interpreters, like I'm doing right now, saying these words to represent reality in these sounds. But they are representations, and at the same time, as these sounds hit your eardrum and reflect through your brain and your mind, that still is locked in the present. And after this happens, you connect more healthily, I would say. You could put it that way. Because there is such a thing as extreme attachment. You just attach differently after that. And this spinning wheel of thoughts, I mean, sometimes thoughts will occur to you. It's more like thoughts have you versus you having thoughts. And if you can imagine returning to that situation, returning the life force back into those thoughts, how you actually gain some sort of control over it. Because you can imagine a child, like when you were young, when I was young, you immediately almost embody the thoughts that occur to you. There's almost no separation between thought and action. And a lot of enlightenment, a lot of people who have talked about this over the years, refer to returning to the view that you had as a child, where there's very minimal separation between thinking and doing. And there's all kinds of strange quotes that used to be strange, but that make perfect sense. Quotes like, an enlightened man peels a potato just to peel a potato. It sounds stupid, but you understand what they're talking about is the present, which is the thing that everybody has to talk about. And this thing is the core of philosophy itself. Without it, it's hard to actually do real philosophy. Because after it, you understand how there are always two interdependent opposites that appear as two separate things, but they're actually two parts of one whole. And in their synergy become a third thing, which I always say. It's like you have two teams playing against each other, two opposites, and when they come together, they are one process, the game. And a man and a woman, two opposites, appear as opposites, two parts of one whole, and when they come together, you have love and actually the making of more people. And right where they meet, that line, that dividing line, is the creating point. It's the friction point. It's where the synergy happens. It's the raw go of it, like the two hemispheres of the brain, each one marvelous in their own right, each one different, but they are split down the middle for a reason. And their synergy, two opposites together, make all human experience and thought. And like I said, this is as close to God as we can get to actually seeing some of what God can see. This is able to put the maximum load onto your nervous system. This is the most our nervous system can take on at once. You can literally feel reality in its entirety surging around you, changing constantly as you're a part of it. And like I said, it's a matter of attention. It's a matter of taking that fine tipped point that is everyday attention. It's that fine keystone, that one little spot at the top of the circle, and turning it into a light that flickers, that turns on at the top of a room, that just illuminates everything all at once. It's going from a fine point to just full coverage. And it's one of the most difficult things about it is that beginning part. Because I remember for me, when I was first introduced to any of this kind of stuff, I thought it like, I remember I could think to myself, this is ridiculous. It's almost like that fine point didn't want to surrender control of attention. It's almost like it wanted the full force of my nervous system to be paying attention to the fine tipped point. It's like it didn't want to relinquish that. So it's like, dude, whatever this is, it's ridiculous. You're just sitting here for what? Like, what's that supposed to do? And, it's almost like a TV that just keeps changing channels. And the more interesting channels might cause you to stay and watch for a while. But once it happens, there's no going back. I remember, for me, there was 3 months, 3 whole months. That's a long time, where I would wake up every single day, lay in my bed for like 2 hours and just do it again. And just lay there and look out the window. And I could hear the birds and the sunlight and the trees and shit out there kind of swaying. And it was just utter awe. Like, indescribable awe. And I would get out of bed and I would just be like, holy shit, this is fucking crazy. Like, I actually was like, dude, this is insane. Every day for 3 months. And then over time, it slowly started to fade. Because that is the, you could say, left and right of it. To where you slowly start to be brought back to attachment. You slowly start to be brought back to the spinning circle of thought and the keystone and all that stuff. You slowly start to rebalance and recalibrate. And I think people kind of resist that. Like, people want to stay in that state for as long as they can, and I get that. But I think that's a failure of wisdom. You have to come back. People say ego death and, the destruction of you and all. Like, no, dude, that's a little much. That's not what you're after. Like, you will struggle even more if your aim is to destroy your ego. Like, that's ridiculous. You want to incorporate it within this system, within you, within this thing. You want to be able to come back to it changed, wiser, having tasted a bit of the objective world. You don't just want to be the one pointing your finger. You want to be where the finger is pointing as well. It's like, and over time I started to hear, people talking about this stuff. Remember, like, when Eckhart Tolle was big, and this thing was kind of a big deal for a little while, and Alan Watts is probably one of the best people to listen to about this kind of stuff, but I think it broke a lot of people. It sort of brought us to this place where a lot of people were in this abstract world, stuck in the abstract, identityless, completely convinced that they're better off in the abstract and in the objective, where there are no rules, no boundaries, your country has no border, you can interpret anything any way you want. Just a complete breakdown of what we've been building to for centuries. And I like, if this happened to everybody all at once in the United States, people would stop working for like 3 months or more, for as long as I did, or forever maybe, because it has such a profound effect on you. It changes the way you experience reality so much that you start to see, even the social world, the social order, everything that we've been doing as just something that's occurring. It changes the meaning in things. So I completely understand how listening to Alan Watts might turn you into a bit of a monk for a little while and make you question literally everything that you've ever thought. And I can see how that might turn you into like some kind of anarchist, or, a bit of a postmodern type person where the rules change. But you have to come back. If you don't come back, you will have a almost fluid identity. And you don't want to be there, I'm telling you. And I'm if I was any kind of advisor, and this is the thing that nobody really ever mentions, I've never heard anybody mention, you have to come back. Just like you don't hang out on the extremes politically, you don't hang out in the extremes in your life, you don't hang out in the objective as well. It's eventually something that's like flipping a switch. Like while you're standing in line at the grocery store and there's shit going on all around you, you can just suddenly bring yourself to that place again and sort of shave off some of the meaning in what's going on and just experience everything as a whole again for a second. And it's very helpful. But you don't want to stay there. You just don't. But I can understand why people want to. And it's this thing that led me to conclude that the universe was self-intelligent. It led me to conclude that this universe didn't need a creator. But I've since recanted on that. Because I realized you can have a centralized intelligence, build self-intelligence into his universe, which actually would be the more intelligent thing to do, be the more efficient thing to do. And the way that I see God's version of this universe, what he's done with this, is build it in a way that it might do something surprising to him, something beautiful. It's like I always say, I feel like he put the patterns, the basic rules, the basic everything, almost like a code, coding, into this reality, and then just kind of flicked it and let it go and began to watch it and see what it does. His creation, absolutely, and maybe some things very specifically done for this or that reason. But on the whole, I feel like the whole thing was set into motion and allowed to do what it's going to do, especially with human beings. And it can be both. And in fact, upon closer investigation, there is just so much, let's say, fine-tuning of this universe that it almost has to be. And there are people who actually draw power from evil. And there are some things that are absolutely so terrible that one concludes as well. The opposite of this must exist as well. I mean sheer evil, man. Especially when you see it over and over again in the world. It's hard not to think to yourself, if people are drawing power from this, there must be others who draw power from its opposite. But yeah, as I talk about this, don't fall for the trick where you think of it as an intellectual concept. Because all you have to do is just sit there quietly. Watch the thoughts go. You can close your eyes if you want to. You don't have to, though. Watch them tick by. Slowly and slowly as the energy fades from the center of the circle. And you sit still. Don't move a muscle. Because if you do, your attention will go there, to a specific place. And just let it go. And this can go deeper and deeper and deeper until your heart rate starts to increase because you think something scary is actually happening. Like, you don't know what it is. You don't know what it feels like. You haven't been there yet. So for a second there, you're like, oh shit, this is different. A couple of years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago at this point, I took acid for the first time. And this was when I was like maybe 32. And this whole Enlightenment thing happened when I was 26. And when I was 26, I had never taken anything like that, ever. No psychedelics. I've smoked weed and taken some opiates, some different other drugs. But nothing like that. So when I was 32, a couple years ago, I took acid for the first time. And I've only taken it twice. And I also took mushrooms, MDMA. It's quite a cocktail. All at once at a festival. And I remember thinking while I was on those drugs that the natural enlightenment that I felt when I was 26 was infinitely more powerful. I remember thinking it was an inferior high. And I was surprised by that. I was like, these are supposed to be some of the most mind-warping, potent chemicals on Earth known to man. And I took a good amount, over the course of a couple of hours. And it was awesome. Don't get me wrong, and I could go into detail about how that was, but it was nothing compared to what happened when I was 26. Nothing. And this is available all the time. And it's what people call enlightenment. It's what people have been talking about for thousands of years. It's why there are dudes sitting in stone buildings across the world, sitting there with their legs crossed and their fingers doing that weird thing on their knees. They're doing that so people can come to them and find out what the fuck they're doing. And the whole trick of it is the fact that it's that simple. That it is just a matter of attention. But once this happens to you, like I said, it changes you. It really changes you. And if this does happen to you, you have to remember to come back. Otherwise, it will unravel you. And that's why it can be dangerous. It's almost like a drug, It can be too objective for you. Especially when, let's say, you live 26 years or 30 years or 50 years or 70 years completely immersed in the subjective, and you've maybe had tastes of the objective. That's why athletes, competitors, after they finish their sport, after they're no longer playing, find this void, this insatiable part of them that exists. It's because it's the closest thing to God they got to on that field or on that court. when their nervous system changed a little bit. They got a little closer. People who drive cars, you can't have that spinning wheel going on while you're playing basketball at the highest level. You can't have that spinning wheel going and the keystone and the thought streaming. In fact, if you do, it'll greatly reduce your quality of play. And people might say he's distracted. They'll look at you and say, I can tell by the way he's playing, he's got something on his mind. And maybe they'll investigate, maybe you're going through a divorce, maybe something's going on. But that's exactly how it is. You make mistakes in high-stakes sports if you're not properly negotiating the spinning wheel, and if your attention isn't properly focused on the game in the present, right now, playing to the highest ability that you can with full commitment. And while you're playing a sport like that, I remember when you really care, you've really bought in, and you're competing, nothing else exists during that period of time. You're not thinking, like, there's a whole bunch of people watching you play, you got your parents there, maybe somebody you're dating. You don't even think about that. And if you do for a second, if you look up in those stands and you see one face disappointed, that's going to change how you play if you let that happen. So players in the NBA, and football players can have this stadium of people around them, but they basically don't exist. They're so focused on that game. So when the sport ends and it's time to move on and do something else, they'll definitely long, more than anything, more than the championships, more than the relationships, they'll long for that feeling that brought them as close to God as they could possibly get.